Here's Brody Brazil.
I think the thing about pitcher injuries across professional baseball is that the conversation seems to come and go. We pay more attention to it at times, then it seems like it fades off into nowhere, then it comes right back into the forefront. But the reality is, we've still yet to really figure out, address, and completely fix the problem. Pitchers are not going nearly as long as they used to. They're suffering way more injuries and setbacks and surgeries than ever before in prior decades of professional baseball. And yet here we are still talking about it, but not actually putting anything in motion to prevent it. This is an article I recently saw in The Athletic. The headline says, "Prominent MLB team physician sounds alarm on pitching injuries." This is a joint effort, the authors of Ken Rosenthal and Eno Saris, and I really appreciate their dedication to this topic. Pitcher injuries. Let's begin there. Dr. Keith Meister is the Texas Rangers head team physician. He said teams are exacerbating the problem of arm and elbow injuries by emphasizing pitchers' performance over their availability. Essentially, we need you to get in there and throw gas, and we don't care if you get hurt or it sets you back or we can't use you for a day or a week or 2 months or whatever. Quote, "These front offices, unfortunately, are living more in the moment than taking a longer, broader term view. There is a way to manage this. What if a guy doesn't have a whip, walks and hits per innings pitch of 0.8? What if he has a whip of 1.1, but he's able to play 162 games?" That's the quote from Dr. Keith Meister. The stats go like this. Pitchers on the injured list, 241. 13, 14 years ago in 2010. It bubbled all the way up to 552. 11 years later in 2021. Now, that number kind of hit a peak. It's declined a little bit, but again, this conversation has seemed to escape the spotlight, even though it's still relevant. And according to Dr. Meister, that number is starting to trend back up all over again. Dr. Meister himself alone repaired 230 elbow ligaments in the last calendar year. That's one doctor. 230 procedures. Isn't that alone like a full year of work? 230 pitcher elbows repaired by one doctor in Texas. He's already saying that we are way ahead of pace. If he's understanding that there is some normality, some baseline, some regularity of elbow and arm injuries, he's already saying that we are way ahead of pace in 2024, and the season hasn't even started yet. Now, is it velocity, like pitchers throwing too hard, or is it the amount of spin that they're putting on the breaking pitches? Meister, director of the Texas Metroplex Institute for Sports Medicine, acknowledges the dangers velocity poses, but he said, and this is critical, spin is worse. The sweeper puts tremendous stress on the inner elbow, Meister said. The power movement changeup, as Meister calls it, also puts inordinate strain on the arm. Quote, "And to throw these pitches," he said, "you have to squeeze the crap out of the baseball." Now, I know he takes pictures of different grips and to see what pitchers are actually doing. He's not just repairing their arms. He's studying these things proactively so he can understand how the injuries happened in the first place, so he can be part of preventing them, trying to either alter mechanics or figure out what can best be taken care of so that pitchers don't find themselves in these major arm and elbow surgeries. Let's go back to that death grip. Years ago, Meister recalls hearing the late Johnny Sain, a former major league pitcher and independent-minded pitching coach, say when a pitcher's holding a ball correctly, he should grip it in a way that he could throw a raw egg without breaking it. So that's an old school mentality that you can throw the baseball and not have to squeeze so tight so that it kind of just slips out of your hands. You don't have to grip it so tight to get that rotation, that spin rate that you want on the baseball to get that breaking pitch moving. Today, it's the opposite, Meister said. Pitchers apply a death grip, that's what he was saying before, to the ball, essentially preloading every muscle in their arms. So even before it's released, before there's that ultimate torque and tension, they're already squeezing it tight and then snapping the wrist. At release, those muscles acutely lengthen in what is known as eccentric contraction. The result can be almost like a hamstring tearing. Oof, I know all too well about that, affecting different pitchers in different parts of the arm. And it's not just sweepers. I know that's kind of a main area of emphasis in this article, that maybe it's the sweeper and the rise of popularity of what's not really a new pitch, but an altered pitch with a new name. Quote, "We have not studied sweepers per se in the biomechanics lab, but we have shown in a number of studies that curveballs and sliders are no more stressful than fastballs." Now, I should tell you, made a mistake there. This comes from Glenn Fleissig, who's the biomechanics research director at American Sports Medicine Institute. Glenn is saying here that it really doesn't have to do with curveballs and sliders. They're no more stressful than fastballs. So Glenn is of the camp and the thought that maybe it's the velocity that's part of this. Therefore, I have no reason to believe sweepers are more of an injury risk factor than any other breaking pitches or fastballs. The science points to three main injury risk factors: effort, velocity is an indication of this within pitchers; amount of pitching, I guess we're talking total innings or total pitches thrown; and mechanics, like if you're really trying to get your arm to do something that maybe your body isn't exactly agreeing with. So that's a totally different perspective right there from somebody else who's also seeing arm injuries, but saying that it's not necessarily the spin or the grip, it's those three things combined. Meister said an analyst with one major league club, told him the average major league career is now under 3 years for all players, and it's just 2.7 seasons for pitchers. Talk about cutting it short. Think about that. A young pitcher who works all their young life to get to the major leagues, and on average, meaning that for every pitcher that lasts 8 years, there's somebody who doesn't even last a full season due to success or struggle, or in this case, arm injury. It's like NFL running back numbers, Meister said. Now you understand NFL running backs take a beating, have it a little bit different. In pitching, your arm, your elbow takes a beating. It has it different than a position player. Cynically, from the ownership side of things, they're never going to have to pay big bucks to any of these players. Forget about them becoming free agents. They're never even going to become ARB eligible. Meaning that Meister is suggesting here that if you own a team, if you run a team, you're just there to run your pitcher out and get the most out of their arm as soon as possible, have them throw as hard as they can for as long as they can, and when they get hurt, oh well, we'll move on to the next arm that can do just the same. Now, I don't want to put words into Dr. Meister's mouth, but it sure seems like that's exactly what he's alluding to there. There's no care or concern or maybe compassion. So here are my takeaways, and I also know this. I became aware of this in the article by The Athletic. MLB has done more than 100 interviews with pitchers, pitching coaches, doctors, people who research this. They right now, baseball, is conducting a study on this issue, and once they have some results or something preliminary, they're going to form a task force and hopefully get something out of this task force to move forward with recommendations or limits or an idea on how to cut down on these elbow and arm injuries. In my opinion, somebody has to speak up for all these young pitchers. I don't think they're going to necessarily do it for themselves. If you're on the cusp of Major League Baseball and all of a sudden you get there and you're being asked to, or even professional baseball, you're being asked to throw harder or more or differently or a lot more breaking pitches. You're being asked to exert your arm in a way that it's not going to work over the long haul. It's not sustainable. Who else is going to stand up for you and say, I don't think that's a good idea? A young pitcher is impressionable. They want to make it. They're going to do what they're told, most likely. I don't know that they're going to speak up for themselves. It's also very clear that pitchers just do not last like they used to in prior decades. 70s and 80s, you're looking at starters going 200 innings or more in a season. Not all of them, but some of them, most certainly. And nowadays, the number's like 120, 130. Maybe some will get to 170. But it's not even close. And the Tommy John surgery itself is almost like a rite of passage. It's not a freak thing. It's like it's commonplace. It's a very common procedure. It's just a foundation of baseball. It's kind of a foundational problem of baseball and what's valued in baseball, Right now, it's hit as many homers as you can, strike out as many people as you can, swing as hard as you can, get that exit velo, that launch angle up, and if you're a pitcher, the velocity and the spin rate. Because now we can measure everything. There's a big difference between 101 versus 97, or a couple hundred RPMs of spin rate on a breaking pitch. And now that we know all this, we can judge everybody against it. And until we stop with all the advanced metrics and all the StatCast information, it's great for fans, but now that we're holding pitchers to it especially, I think we're putting them in a very difficult situation injury-wise. So again, I appreciate Ken and Eno for doing this article. Prominent MLB team physician of the Rangers, Dr. Meister, sounding the alarm once again on pitcher injuries. So yeah, the conversation, it's back. Here it is again. It might fade or disappear for the rest of this year. I don't know. But the question is, have we ever actually done anything about it? Have we fixed this? Have we remedied it? The answer is definitely no, we have not. You made it here to the end of the video. You know I appreciate that. Thumbs up down below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so I can definitely see you back here next time.